I did a risotto, I know, a few weeks ago, but I can't resist doing another one because it is asparagus season. And I've also got some wild garlic that I'm going to incorporate into an asparagus, pea, and wild garlic risotto. I want to start, I'm not actually cooking it until later, but by the magic of video, it comes straight after this. But it's early afternoon and I'm just quiet at home, so I thought I'll get my prep done. I've shown you in a top tip how to snap off the woody end of an asparagus. I'm going to put these in the saucepan. So I'm going to do three different things with the asparagus. So the woody ends are going to go in a saucepan with the stock, and I will warm the stock and leave the asparagus ends to infuse into the stock. So I have a nice asparagus-y stock. The other thing I'm going to do, whoops, I should have a knife at the ready, is I'm going to finish the risotto with the tips. So I'm cutting the tips off, and then I'm just going to roughly chop the edible part of the stalk, and I'm going to cook all of these, plunge them into ice water and puree the stalk bit and keep the tips for when we finish the risotto. I hope that all makes sense. It will if you carry on watching. Bowl of iced water. This is the cooked asparagus. I put the stalks in first and cooked them for 1 minute, and then I put in the tips and I cooked them with the stalks for a further 2 minutes in salted water. I'm now going to leave these in the iced water until they're cooled completely. Putting them in iced water ensures that they stay beautiful and green and stops the cooking. A quick run through of all the ingredients you're going to need. We've done the asparagus. You're going to need some wild garlic. If you haven't got wild garlic, you could actually replace it with watercress. We've got very finely chopped shallot. The shallot should be chopped literally. It's one banana shallot, and I say as a guide, the size of a grain of rice. I've got some wine that's going to be splashed in. The stock that we talked about earlier, I will take out. I'm going to take out the asparagus stalks before I warm it. Rice. I think you've seen me talk about this rice before. It is wonderful, but it is £10 a kilo. But carnaroli or arborio rice will do just as well. I'm going to cook a quantity for 2 people tonight, so I'm going to use 150 grams of rice and between 700 to 800 ml of stock. Allow yourself at least half an hour from when you start. I do find that this rice takes a little bit longer to cook. I've also prepared ready to finish the risotto. There are 2 tablespoons of parmesan and 2 tablespoons of creme fraiche. Also, the herbs I'm going to finish with, if you can see them, I've got some tarragon and chives. I'm also lucky enough to have some chervil growing in my garden, which I absolutely adore. It's much more subtle than tarragon, but if you haven't got chervil, it's not a problem. But if you do have a garden or even a pot that you can grow it in on a balcony, I love chervil. What else? I think that's all the ingredients. So I have separated out the asparagus tips, and I'm going to put those aside because they will go on right at the end. I've got my mini chopper here. These are all the asparagus stalks going into the mini chopper. I'm going to cut off about 2/3 of the oh, come on, wild garlic. I'm going to roughly chop that, and that's going to go in here as well. I'm also going to put in just a splash of stock to loosen it up so that it can be blitzed. And we're going to blitz it to a puree, and then that will be saved to add into the dish right at the end. Oh, and peas. I said it was going to be peas. Yes, well, I completely forgot. I'm going to get some peas out of the freezer. and I'm just going to have them in a bowl. Probably 3 to 4 tablespoons of peas, which we again will get stirred through at the end. I apologise for that. I am actually going to add a tiny bit more stock just to get a really nice mush, and then I want to show you what sort of consistency we're going for. All of this is going to get stirred in at the end, and I would advise you to get all of this stuff done before you then start the risotto. I'll just show you. Oh, I'll take this off. You can see it's like a, I don't know how I would describe it, but it's rustic. I taste everything. It actually could do with a bit of salt, but I'm not going to salt anything now until towards the end, because we're going to get salt from the Parmesan. There'll be salt in the stock. Oh, a note on the stock. So the stock I've used is homemade stock, which is not salty. That's why I make my own stock. So for a low sodium stock, you want to add to 700 to 800 ml of stock. You want to add 2 teaspoons. I know it sounds a lot, but it's not. 2 teaspoons of salt. Okay, we're ready to go. I need to do a bit of a clear up before I start the cook. 25 grams of butter in a saucepan. This is the type of saucepan I prefer to use. I guess you'd call it a saute pan. It's quite wide. So I'm going to melt the butter, and once it starts bubbling, we will add in the rice. I'd just like to say my last risotto movie got very few views. So maybe there's a lot of you out there that don't like risotto. But if you've been scared of cooking risotto, as I was for about 55 years, I am new to the party. I've been cooking them now for about 7 years, and I think I've really nailed it. So give it a go. I'm just waiting for my butter to bubble. Butter's bubbling, rice is going in. I'm going to toss it in the butter, and I'm going to toast it. So I want it to start colouring slightly and to start smelling slightly toasted. And I want the rice grains to be hot, because the heat from the rice grains are what's going to cook the shallot. Use the time while your rice is toasting to finely chop your herbs and add 3/4 of it to the Parmesan and creme fraiche for the final stir through. You can also roughly chop what's left of your wild garlic. If you just use your knuckle to touch the rice, you can tell that it's hot. It's also, there's a few little toasted grains in there. I'm now going to add the shallot, stir it through the rice, and cook it for just 1 minute, and the heat from the rice will cook the shallot. I'm just going to leave that for 1 minute. My stock is heating. I've got wine, what's that? 1/3 of a glass. I'm going to drop the heat right down, and this is the start of the cooking process. The wine has gone in, we're going to stir it. Just to help me with timing, I set my timer for 30 minutes because that's how long it should take. But ultimately, you'll be testing it visually, texturally, and taste. So we're just going to let that bubble, let the alcohol come off. And in fact, that has reduced very quickly. And I'm now going to just add the first slurp of stock. As I've said before, you can't rush a risotto. You just want to add the stock a little bit at a time and then start stirring. I know I've said this before, and some of you have watched my risotto films and will have heard it, but in case anybody is watching this film that hasn't seen me cook a risotto before, stirring it is the thing that releases the starch from the rice. And what you're going to end up with are individual grains of rice. Every grain of rice should be separate, not a horrible, stodgy mess. Next little taste test. Just going to take a tiny little bit. There is now the smallest amount of bite to the rice, which is great. Everything that you're putting in is now cold, so keep the heat on a really low light. I'm going to add the asparagus with the wild garlic. Stir it through. Keep it on a really low light. I've got creme fraiche, parmesan, and 3/4 of the herbs going in. Stir it through. The peas, which are semi-frozen, I took them out when I remembered that I was putting peas in. They're going in. They've got to warm through. And the thing that I'm leaving to the side are the asparagus tips, the rest of the herbs, and the garlic. The asparagus tips will go in right at the end. Give it a good stir, taste it. It doesn't need any more salt. All of the salt went into the stock and it's enough for everything. Just make sure it's warmed through. I'm going to turn the heat off now and just let it permeate through. I'm actually going to bring this to the camera so you can see. It looks like slop, which is what it should look like, but every single grain of rice is separate. It shouldn't be a gluggy porridge. That is exactly the consistency that a risotto should be. It's nice and warm. I'm now going to add most of the asparagus tips. I'm leaving a few just to decorate the plate. Just fold them through and now I'll serve. Oh. Asparagus, pea and wild garlic risotto. Give it a good grind of pepper before you serve it.